When I was 10 years old, the toys I wanted didn't exist. They just didn't make characters from the animations I liked watching, namely One Piece. So, being a kid that didn't take no for an answer and having 3 years of drawing experience under my belt, I decided to make my own out of paper. Now, they were very basic in the beginning, mostly just tubes of paper colored and drawn to look like the character, held together with split pins. They couldn't stand on their own, the illustrations were amateur, and the articulation was basic. However, I persisted, constantly seeking to improve my skills with each and every model, something I can't help but try and do every time I start a new project. I always tried to make every model the best one yet, improving upon everything that preceded it in every possible way. This can be my downfall when it comes to finishing everything that I start, but I am convinced that if I didn't think this way, my models would still be basic tubes of paper, and this channel, my artwork, wouldn't exist. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of my early projects. I tended to throw them away in a fit of frustration when they didn't do what I thought they should do. But with time, I've matured a little bit and thought maybe I shouldn't throw my work away when it fails. Now I throw them into a box. This box. So this box is where I keep all my older models that I've made over the past 3 or 4 years, I suppose. And I get pretty excited every time I look through this box because it's a good reminder of everything I've done already and how far I've come. This is Kizaru from One Piece. I was always really proud of the face on this guy. I think with the sunglasses and the drawing, it was really well done. He's really good actually, Kizaru. He was always one of my best. The problem with him was he has these pathetic little hip joints here that just did not support his legs and he could not stand. In fact, his legs would always fall off. Moving on. This is Meruem from Hunter x Hunter. And he's actually really heavy. And that was an issue of him, was I was just using too much paper that the little paper joints couldn't possibly support the weight. One cool thing I liked about him was the tail. You see, in his own series, Hunter x Hunter, his tail is always drawn close together like this, but if you were to make it like that, it wouldn't really be able to bend very far. So I made it so each of the sections could extend, allowing for more bending and articulation. All the individual joints ended up being too loose, so it couldn't support its own weight, which is the story of my life. But the idea is very, very cool and something I want to do again and attempt again when I remake this character one day. Netero from Hunter x Hunter. You might have noticed he actually has plastic joints, and this was from a time when I just gave up on trying to make my models stand up on their own when entirely made from paper. So what I ended up doing was I ended up wrapping paper around a plastic frame that I had from the Bionicle, the Lego series. They had these cool plastic frames, so I just took them and I just wrapped paper around them to try to get my characters to stand, and that was pretty effective for a while. I had 3 or 4 characters using this method that I was very proud of at the time. So that's Netero. We'll look at that last. Here is a Blackbeard from One Piece. Most of the characters I tend to make end up being ridiculously ripped, so this was a lot of fun to do something. Also, when it comes to the frame for his body, it's really just a whole bunch of tubes of paper, just like stuck and glued together with a bunch of tape in any way that I could think of. There's really no single method to making these things. It's just whatever I think of at the time. He was really good. I did like him, except the problem was the joints are just, they're too loose, and he has no hope of standing on his own. But that is the same head of the character I showed you in my Armored Titan video, if you watched that one. Goku This was when I tried to make Goku about a year and a half ago. Like, all the figures in this box are in this box because the joints are too weak to support their own weight. And you can also see there's just like a whole bunch of tape and everything everywhere. And like, I just used way too much paper, and these things were just too heavy to support their own weight. And he ended up being just way too stocky and bulky. Didn't really look like the character at all. I think the only redeeming factor of this model is the creases on the pants weren't too bad. And I also used a different method for the legs here, where instead of pegging in sideways to the hip like my current models, I tried putting them upwards into the body, and so obviously there was no waist joint back then. I mean, it's not necessarily the worst way of articulating things, and if you wanted to get it to the side, you had to sort of rotate it out and then spin the leg forward, and then it could kick sideways. So that was just a different way I used to do things back then. It changes all the time. There was a long process of me just making things in a way that now, in retrospect, they just seem stupid, the ideas I had for making things, but that was the best I had at the time, so that was what I did. Now this, my favorite One Piece character. As you'll probably see in this box, every second character is a One Piece character, because One Piece is actually the series that started me making paper models in the beginning. When I was 10 years old, I watched the series on TV as a kid, and they didn't have the toys of any of the characters available in my country, so I tried making them. And One Piece has so many wacky and creative designs that it's just a real fun for me to experiment with. And this is Doflamingo, the second time I tried to make him. This is Eneru from One Piece. I had another strange idea for the leg articulation where it was going to bend there in his hip, and then the leg was going to bend there, but that just looked weird. Stajun from Toriko. I stuck individual strands of paper on for every strand of hair, so that was time consuming. And here it is. This is Kizaru 1.0. Kizaru from One Piece was the first character I decided to use the plastic frame for. So here's a comparison of the same character just a few years apart, and just how much better I have gotten at making these. Dio from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. This was the first version of Blackbeard I made. And you can see I just drew his face flat and then sort of folded it around a little bit, which doesn't look quite as good as the updated version, which has a lot more angle to his face and just fits the character a lot better. Crocodile from One Piece. Aokiji from One Piece. A lot of One Piece characters, and the admirals are some of my favorite. These are the legs of Eneru from One Piece, and you can see this is the plastic frame I was talking about that you could get in some Bionicle toys or the Lego Hero Factory line. That worked well for a long time. Avdol from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. This was the first time I decided to try and have a consistent scale among all my paper models for every character. One of Zoro's swords that is too flimsy. So this is pretty much what I'd do with a plastic frame, is I would just wrap paper around it to get the thickness that I wanted for certain body parts, and then just do the best I could from there. This was going to be Thanos from Marvel Comics. He was the first time I tried to make my own paper action figure with my own paper joints from scratch since using the plastic frames. He was a flop. All the methods I used were just so outdated. There was an abundance of duct tape here that completely unnecessary. The structure and everything is weird, but this is valuable to me because it was the first time I attempted to make something on my own. And although I didn't finish it, it did lay the groundwork for everything that has come since. Trafalgar Law from One Piece. Just the paper of the body ripped off the plastic frame of Akainu from One Piece. My 1.0 model. Kizaru 2.0's legs. The lightning effect parts I made individual pieces of for the Pikachu video on my channel. And the rest of the stuff in here is just old pieces of paper that have fallen off of all my old models that I'm never really going to use again. So now we move on to this. These are the frame pieces for an Apocalypse figure from X-Men comics that I never ended up finishing. See, this is actually this is the Darth Vader model that I showcased in my very first video on this channel. This was an updated Dio Brando from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. As you can see, just much better proportioned than the original one. A better idea of anatomy, better sculpting, better coloring. A definite upgrade over this one. A updated version of Trafalgar Law. I love this character for his tattoos. They are just really cool looking and really fun to draw. Suicide Squad Joker, that I don't think I'm actually ever going to finish now. And here's something I wanted to show you guys. Before I went crazy with characters like Superman and Kenshiro here, that has each individual muscle being like a separate piece of paper that is cut and folded onto the complete model, I used to keep it really simple. As you can see for the torso here, I just drew it flat like this, and then from the side view, I just drew what his body would look like directly from a side view, and I attached it here at the sides of the chest so it would stick out like this, and then I just folded the side to the front and made everything meet together, and that was simply how I got the shape for the body with the various muscles. And I think, although simple, it was a very, very helpful method. Jotaro Kujo from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, one of my favorite character designs of all time. This is an earlier model of Roronoa, and you can see back then I used to just pad up the body with tissues or like paper, scraps of paper scrunched up. And that was how I would do the padding a lot of the time for these characters. They were really squishy and flimsy back then too. And that is it. These are all the scraps. These are all the things that haven't worked out, that I do not keep on my shelf and that I will not be touching again because they're just too outdated. But it's nice to come to this toy box every now and then and sort of just reflect and reminisce on where I started as opposed to where I am right now. And there are still some good ideas in here for various characters. And finally, I have my shelf over here of my more successful models. As you've seen, I've spent a lot of time making paper models, only to have the vast majority of them fail or never be finished. It has been over 10 years since I started making these models, and it's only within the last year or two that I've actually completed them and got them to stand on their own, unsupported. So if you're watching my videos trying to make your own thing and wondering why it doesn't look exactly like mine, try to remember I've spent a ridiculous amount of time working on this when nobody was watching. And I believe every single one of you could do anything you wanted if you spent just half the amount of time I've spent on making paper toys. So create whatever you're going to create, forgetting everything everybody else has done, focusing only on what you can do now with what you have. That's what I did. I didn't worry about whether the materials I had were the best ones or whether I was using the best paper, and I didn't sit around waiting for instructions or for toy factories to make the toys I wanted them to. So those are my thoughts. Thank you for listening in, and I do have some more tutorials in the works that will hopefully give you some ideas for your own creations, but I urge you to not just wait around for them and create something now, if you want to. See you next time.